The great crystal towers of this Eltharian capital world reached high into the purple sky. Each tower was bigger than most mountains and sparkled like diamonds in the light of 3 suns. From these towers, Emperor Kethver ruled over 1,000 worlds across the galaxy. His empire was the biggest and strongest force in known space. But today, the emperor felt tired and angry as he stood in his throne room. The room was huge, with walls made of clear crystal that showed the stars beyond. In the center of the room floated a giant picture made of light. The picture showed a massive round barrier far away in space. The barrier looked like a giant soap bubble, but it was bigger than most solar systems. The emperor watched as another expensive ship tried to break through the barrier. The ship was worth more money than some planets made in a year. It was filled with the best technology the empire had. Smart scientists had spent decades building it. But as soon as it touched the strange barrier, the ship simply disappeared. It turned into tiny pieces and floated away like dust. Another failure, the emperor said. His voice was deep and rough. His skin was covered in green scales that changed color when he was angry. Right now, they were turning dark red. Next to him stood his chief helper, Velther. Velther had 4 arms and purple skin. He had served the emperor for over 200 years. My lord, Velther said carefully, perhaps we should accept that this barrier cannot be broken. The emperor turned to look at him. His yellow eyes were full of anger. Except we are the Zeltharian Empire. We have conquered every enemy. We have solved every problem. We do not accept defeat. The barrier had been there for as long as anyone could remember. Old stories said it appeared 5,000 years ago when the empire was still young. At first, nobody cared much about it. It was just a strange thing in space, far from any important worlds. But then the scientists discovered what was behind the barrier. Their instruments could barely see through it, but what they found made everyone excited. Inside the barrier was the center of the galaxy. And in that center were power sources beyond anything they had ever imagined. The energy readings showed power that could run their entire empire for millions of years. There were also signs of technology that seemed impossible. Ships that could travel between stars in seconds. Machines that could create matter for nothing. Weapons that could destroy entire solar systems with a single shot. For 5,000 years, the smartest people in the empire had tried to break through the barrier. They built research stations around it. These stations were like small cities floating in space. Thousands of scientists worked there, studying the barrier day and night. They tried everything. They shot powerful lasers at it. They sent machines that could break apart atoms. They even tried to go around it, but the barrier seemed to cover the entire center of the galaxy like a giant ball. Some of the best minds in galactic history had spent their entire lives trying to solve this problem. Master Zolkith had studied the barrier for 300 years before he died. The great inventor Mikhailin had built 50 different machines to try to break it. None of them worked. The emperor walked closer to the light picture. He could see the research stations that orbited the barrier. They looked like tiny dots next to the massive energy field. Tell me about the latest attempt, he said. Velther touched a control panel with one of his 4 hands. The picture changed to show what had just happened. The new penetration probe was our most advanced yet. It used quantum phase technology and was protected by the strongest shields we have ever made. And it lasted exactly 0.3 seconds longer than the previous attempt before being destroyed. The Emperor's scales turned an even darker red. 0.3 seconds. After 10 years of work and enough money to buy a small star system. Yes, my lord. The Emperor began to pace around the room. His heavy footsteps echoed off the crystal walls. What do our scientists say now? They believe the barrier may be made from a type of energy We do not understand. Some think it was created by an ancient race that was far more advanced than us. Others believe it might be a natural force of the universe. Natural force? The Emperor laughed, but there was no humor in it. Nothing natural could be that perfect. Look at it, Velther. It is a perfect sphere. It pulses at exactly the same rate all the time. Nature does not make perfect spheres. Velther nodded. The Emperor was right. The barrier was too perfect to be natural. It had been built by someone or something. But who could have been powerful enough to build such a thing? And why had they built it? Perhaps, Velther said slowly, whoever built it did not want anyone to reach the galactic center. Then they were fools, the Emperor said. All that power, all that knowledge, just sitting there unused. What is the point of having such things, if nobody can use them? The Emperor stopped pacing and looked out at the stars. I have been thinking about this problem my entire life. My father thought about it. His father before him. How many generations of emperors have stood in this room and stared at that barrier? 47 emperors have ruled since the barrier was discovered, my lord. 47. And not one of us has found the answer. The Emperor was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke again, more softly this time. Sometimes I wonder if we are thinking about this the wrong way. What do you mean, my lord? We always try to break it or go through it. We think of it as a wall that we must destroy. But what if it is something else? What if there is a different way? Velther had heard this kind of talk from the Emperor before. Usually it came late at night, when the Emperor had been thinking too much about the barrier. The greatest minds in the Empire have considered every possibility, my lord. If there was another way, they would have found it. The Emperor sighed. Yes, the greatest minds in the Empire. All trained in the same schools. All thinking in the same ways. All following the same methods that have failed for 5,000 years. You speak as if fresh thinking would help. But what could be fresher than the brilliant young scientists who graduate from our academies each year? Young, yes, but trained to think like everyone else. They learn the same theories, the same methods, the same assumptions that have kept us stuck for 50 centuries. The Emperor touched another control, and the picture changed to show the entire galaxy. Thousands of star systems glowed like tiny lights. Most of them belonged to the Empire. Look at all we have accomplished, Velther. We have explored most of the galaxy. We have conquered races that seemed impossible to defeat. We have built technology that our ancestors would have called magic. And yet one barrier stops us. One barrier that may require thinking we have never tried. Velther was confused. Where would such thinking come from, my lord? We have the smartest beings in the galaxy working on this problem. The Emperor smiled. For the first time that day, it was not a happy smile. Perhaps, old friend, we need to look beyond our empire. Perhaps we need minds that have not been trained to think our way. You mean the primitive races on the outer rim? My lord, most of them have barely discovered fire. Some have not even left their home planets. Exactly. The Emperor turned away from the starfield. Minds that see problems differently. Minds that do not know something is impossible. Velther looked worried. His purple skin turned a lighter shade, which happened when he was nervous. My lord, surely you do not mean to ask barbarians for help with our greatest scientific challenge. I do not know what I mean, the Emperor admitted. But I know that doing the same thing for 5,000 years and expecting different results is the true barbarity. The Emperor looked at the barrier one more time. Somewhere beyond that energy field was enough power to reshape the galaxy. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, unknown to both of them, was a small blue planet where beings who had just learned to travel between stars were about to change everything. Captain Jake Morrison rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the control screens one more time. The Earthship New Horizons had been traveling through space for 6 months now. Their mission was simple: explore new star systems and look for signs of life or useful resources. Jake was 42 years old and had been flying spaceships for 15 years. He had brown hair that was starting to turn gray and kind eyes that missed nothing. His crew trusted him completely. They had to, because they were very far from Earth now. "Captain," called Lisa Brooks from her science station, "you need to see this." Lisa was the ship's science officer. She was 35 years old, with red hair and green eyes. She was very smart, but she thought about problems in ways that sometimes confused other scientists. That made her perfect for exploration. Missions where strange things happened all the time. Jake walked over to her station. "What have you found?" Lisa pointed at her screen. "There's something massive ahead of us. At first I thought it was a moon or small planet, but look at these readings." Jake looked at the numbers on the screen. He was not a scientist, but he had learned enough to understand the basics. "These energy readings are impossible. Nothing natural gives off this much power." "That's what I thought too, but there's more." Lisa touched some buttons, and the screen changed. "It's not just big and powerful. It's perfectly round. I mean perfectly. No natural object is that perfect." Jake stared at the screen. The object ahead of them was indeed perfectly round, like a giant ball made of light. It was bigger than Earth's moon and glowed with a soft blue color. "How far away is it?" "About 2 hours at our current speed. Should we change course?" Jake thought for a moment. They were explorers. Their job was to investigate strange things, not run away from them. "No, but go to yellow alert. Wake up the rest of the crew and make sure all systems are ready." An hour later, the entire crew was awake and watching their screens. The strange object was much bigger than they had thought. As they got closer, they could see it was not solid. It looked more like a bubble or force field surrounding something. "Captain," said the communications officer, a young man named Tony. "Chun, I'm picking up some kind of signal. It's very faint, but it's definitely artificial. Can you tell where it's coming from?" "It seems to be coming from the other side of that barrier, sir." Lisa was studying her instruments carefully. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy sources beyond that field. The readings are off the charts. Whatever is behind there has more power than our entire solar system." Jake was about to respond when Tony suddenly sat up straight. "Captain, incoming transmission. It's very strong, and it's coming from behind us." Jake spun around. "Behind? You? What's back there?" The answer came in the form of 5 enormous spaceships that appeared out of nowhere. They were huge, each one at least 10 times bigger than the New Horizons. They looked like they were made of dark metal and crystal, and they moved without making any sound. "Unknown vessel," came a voice over the radio. The ship's computer quickly translated it into English. "You have entered restricted space that belongs to the Zelfarian Empire. Identify yourselves immediately or you will be destroyed." Jake's heart started beating faster. This was first contact with an alien race, something humans had dreamed about for centuries. But these aliens did not sound friendly. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship New Horizons," he said into his microphone. "We are explorers from the planet Earth. We mean no harm. We are just investigating this strange object." There was a long pause. Then the alien voice spoke again. "Earth? We have no record of this world. You will come with us. Do not try to escape, or you will be destroyed." Lisa looked at Jake with worried eyes. "Captain, their ships are surrounding us. Their weapons are much more powerful than ours." Jake nodded. They had no choice. "Understood. We will follow you." The alien ships led them away from the strange barrier to a space station that was even bigger than the ships. The station looked like a small city floating in space, with thousands of lights and what looked like gardens visible through clear walls. Soon, Jake and Lisa found themselves standing in a huge room inside the station. The room had high ceilings and walls made of some kind of crystal. At one end of the room sat a creature that was clearly in charge. The creature was tall, maybe 8 feet, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. His head was larger than a human head, and his eyes were bright yellow. He wore clothes that looked expensive, and had many pieces of jewelry that glowed with their own light. "I am Governor Zekthul," the creature said. His voice was deep and sounded like he was used to being obeyed. "You claim to be from a world called Earth. Our records show no such world." Jake stood as straight as he could. He was nervous, but he did not want to show it. "Earth is in a star system about 50 light years from here. We are a young species. We only invented faster-than-light travel about 20 years ago." Zekthal laughed. It was not a nice sound. 20 years? We have. And traveling between stars for over 5,000 years. You are children playing with toys. You do not understand. Lisa stepped forward. She had been quiet, but now she was curious about something more important than the aliens' rudeness. "That barrier we saw, what is it exactly?" Several other aliens in the room started laughing. Zekthal held up one of his 4 hands to make them stop. "The void barrier? It is a problem that has challenged our greatest minds for 50 centuries. It blocks access to the galactic center, where there are energy sources beyond your primitive understanding." "Have you tried to get through it?" Lisa asked. "Tried?" Zekthul's yellow eyes seemed to glow brighter. "Child, we have spent more resources trying to breach that barrier than your entire species has ever produced. Our scientists have devoted their lives to it. We have built machines that could destroy your sun, and they cannot even scratch it." Jake could see that Lisa was getting excited. She always got that look when she encountered a problem that interested her. "What methods have you tried?" "Methods?" Zekthul stood up from his chair. "We have tried every method known to science. We have attacked it with weapons that could destroy planets. We have studied it with instruments that can see the smallest parts of atoms. We have sent our best minds to study it for hundreds of years. But what if you're thinking about it wrong?" Lisa said suddenly. The room became very quiet. All the aliens stared at her. Zekthul's skin began to change color, turning a darker shade of blue. "Wrong?" he said slowly. "You think we are thinking about it wrong? You, who have been in space for 20 years, think you know better than 5,000 years of imperial science." Jake put his hand on Lisa's arm to warn her to be careful, but she ignored him. "I'm just saying that sometimes a fresh perspective can help. Maybe you're so used to thinking about it one way that you can't see other possibilities." The laughter that followed was loud and long. Several of the aliens seemed to think this was the funniest thing they had ever heard. Zekthal let them laugh for a full minute before raising his hand again. "Fresh perspective," he repeated. "From beings who have barely left their home system, this is amusing." He paused and seemed to think about something. "Very well. I will give you 1 week. 1 week for what?" Jake asked. 1 week to examine our research and provide your fresh perspective. When you fail, and you will fail, you will broadcast your failure to your entire species. Let it be a lesson about the dangers of arrogance. Lisa's eyes lit up. "You'll let us see your research?" "All of it? All of it. 5,000 years of data, experiments, and theories. Perhaps it will teach you the proper respect for your betters." Jake wanted to say no. This seemed like a trap, but he could see that Lisa was already thinking hard about the problem. And maybe, just maybe, there was a tiny chance she could help. "We accept," he said. Zekthul smiled, showing teeth that were too sharp. "Excellent. Kilvin will show you to the research facility. I look forward to your inevitable failure." As they were led out of the room, Jake whispered to Lisa, "Do you really think you can solve something they've been working on for 5,000 years?" Lisa smiled back at him. "Probably not. But I've never seen a problem I didn't want to try to solve." The research facility was the biggest building Lisa had ever seen. It stretched across an entire asteroid and had thousands of rooms filled with computers, instruments, and machines she could not even name. The walls were made of the same crystal material as the space station, and she could see stars through them. Kilvin was the alien scientist assigned to help her. He was younger than Governor Zekthil, with lighter blue skin and only 3 arms instead of 4. Lisa learned that Zeltharians grew their 4th arm as they got older. Kilvin was about 200 years old, which made him young for his species. "This is the main data center," Kilvin said, as they walked into a room that was bigger than a football field. The walls were covered with screens showing numbers, charts, and pictures of the barrier. "Here we keep all the research from the past. 5,000 years. Lisa stopped walking and stared. There was so much information that it made her head hurt just thinking about it. "All of this is about the barrier?" "Yes, every experiment, every theory, every failed attempt. Your primitive mind will never be able to process even a small part of it." Lisa ignored the insult. She was used to people thinking she was strange. Even human scientists sometimes did not understand the way she thought about problems. "Can I start with the basic information? Like what the barrier is made of?" Kilvin touched a control panel, and one of the big screens changed. It showed a picture of the barrier with lots of numbers around it. "The barrier appears to be made of exotic energy that we do not fully understand. It is perfectly round and has a diameter of exactly 50,000 kilometers. It pulses every 47.3 seconds with a slight increase in energy output." Lisa pulled out a small notebook and pencil from her pocket. Kilvin stared at these primitive tools with disbelief. "You are going to use those instead of our advanced recording systems?" "Sometimes old ways work better," Lisa said, writing down. "The numbers. Tell me more about the pulses." "The pulses are irrelevant. They are just a side effect of the energy field. We focus on the main structure of the barrier." Lisa wrote down more notes. "But why does it pulse? Why every 47.3 seconds exactly? That seems very specific." "It is meaningless background noise. No serious scientist wastes time on such details." Lisa kept writing. This was already interesting. In her experience, nothing in nature was meaningless. If something happened regularly, there was usually a reason. For the next 3 days, Lisa studied the Zeltharian research. She read about thousands of experiments. Scientists had shot powerful lasers at the barrier. They had sent nuclear weapons. They had tried to dig under it, go around it, and even travel through time to before it existed. Nothing worked, but the more Lisa read, the more confused she became. Not confused about the barrier, but confused about how the Zeltharians thought. "About it. You always try to break it or destroy it," she said to Kilvin on the 3rd day. "Every single experiment is about using force. Of course, it is a barrier. Barriers are meant to be broken. But what if it's not meant to be broken? What if it's meant to be opened?" Kilvin's skin changed to a darker blue, which Lisa had learned meant he was getting annoyed. "Opened? There is no mechanism for opening. We have scanned every part of it for 5,000 years. Have you, though?" Lisa asked. She pulled out her notebook and showed him her drawings. While the Zeltharians used advanced computers, Lisa preferred to draw pictures by hand. It helped her think her notebook was full of simple drawings of the barrier. But her drawings were different from the complex computer models the aliens used. She focused on patterns and shapes instead of numbers and equations. "Look at this," she said, pointing to one of her drawings. You said the barrier pulses every 47.3 seconds. But I noticed something in your data. The pulse changes very slightly, depending on the time of day. That is just gravitational influence from nearby stars. It has no significance, maybe, but what if it does? What if the barrier is responding to something? Lisa flipped to another page in her notebook, and look at this pattern. Every few hours, there's a tiny change in the energy frequency. You called it background noise, but it's not random. It repeats. Kilvin looked at her drawings with growing confusion. These are just meaningless fluctuations. We have studied them for centuries. But have you studied them as a pattern? Have you thought about what they might mean together? For the first time, Kilvin seemed less sure of himself. What do you mean together? Lisa started drawing a new picture. What if the barrier isn't a wall? What if it's more like a lock? A lock? That is impossible. There is no keyhole, no mechanism, no way. Tuo, not that kind of lock, Lisa interrupted. More like a combination lock. You know, where you have to input the right sequence to open it. Kilvin stared at her. You think the barrier is waiting for some kind of code? Maybe. Think about it. Whoever built this thing was obviously very advanced. They had technology we can barely understand. If they wanted to keep people out forever, they could have built something impossible to break. But what if they just wanted to keep out people who weren't smart enough to figure out the code? Lisa showed him more of her drawings. Look at the pulse patterns. Look at the frequency changes. Look at how it responds to gravitational forces. What if all of these things are clues? Even if you are correct, Kilvin said slowly, how could anyone possibly figure out the right code? There would be billions of possible combinations, Lisa smiled. That's where being human comes in handy. We're really good at seeing patterns, and we're too stubborn to give up. She spent the fourth day working on the pattern. While the Zeltharians had always treated each piece of data separately, Lisa tried to see how they all fit together. She looked for connections between the pulse timing, the frequency changes, and the gravitational influences. Slowly, a picture began to form in her mind. The barrier wasn't just sitting there doing nothing. It was waiting. It was listening. And maybe, just maybe, it was waiting for someone to talk to it in the right way. Kilvin, she said on the fifth day, I need to see the real-time data from the barrier, not the old records. What's happening right now? Kilvin led her to a room with instruments that were connected directly to sensors near the barrier. The screens showed the barrier's current activity. Lisa watched the patterns for hours. She made notes and drew more pictures. Slowly, she began to see something that the Zeltharians had missed because they were looking too hard at the complex details. It's music, she said suddenly. What? The patterns. They're like a musical sequence. Not random at all. There's a rhythm, a melody. Someone programmed this thing to play a song. Kilvin looked at the data again. I do not understand what you mean by music. Lisa tried to explain. Humans use music for lots of things. We use it to communicate, to remember things, to create patterns. What if whoever built the barrier did the same thing? What if the code is hidden in the musical pattern? She worked through the night, treating the barrier's energy patterns like a complex piece of music. She looked for themes, repetitions, and variations. And gradually, piece by piece, she began to understand the song the barrier was singing by the sixth day. She thought she had figured it out. The sequence was based on mathematical patterns that appeared in nature, but arranged in a specific order. It was like a test that only someone who really understood both science and art could pass. I think I know how to open it, she told Kilvin. Kilvin's skin had turned almost white, which meant he was shocked. You believe you have solved the void barrier? In 6 days? I think so. But there's only one way to find out. Word spread quickly through the research facility. Soon, scientists from all over the Empire were watching as Lisa prepared her test. Even Emperor Kethfor himself came to see what the human thought she could do. Lisa felt nervous with so many important aliens watching her, but she tried not to let it show. She had double-checked her work many times. Either she was right, or she was about to embarrass herself in front of the most powerful people in the galaxy. The sequence needs to be sent as energy pulses, she explained to the gathered crowd. But not random pulses. They have to match the mathematical pattern hidden in the barrier's own signals. She had worked with Kilvin to program a probe that could send the right kind of energy signals. If she was right, the probe would be able to pass through the barrier safely. If she was wrong, it would be destroyed like all the others. "Are you ready, Dr. Brooks?" asked Emperor Kethva R. Lisa took a deep breath. "Ready?" The probe was launched toward the barrier. As it got close, Lisa began sending her calculated sequence of energy pulses. The pulses were based on the musical pattern she had discovered hidden in the barrier's signals. For a moment, nothing happened. The probe continued flying toward the barrier, and Lisa's heart sank. Maybe she had been wrong after all. Then something incredible happened. The barrier began to change. The solid blue energy field started to flicker. A section of it became transparent and disappeared completely. The probe flew through the opening without being destroyed. The silence in the research facility was complete. Nobody moved or spoke. They were all staring at something that should have been impossible. Lisa had done in 6 days what the Zeltharian Empire could not do in 5,000 years. She had opened the void barrier. The probe that had passed through the barrier was sending back information that made everyone in the research facility hold their breath. The screens filled with readings that seemed impossible. Energy sources more powerful than entire star systems. Technology that looked like magic. Cities floating in space that were bigger than planets. But most shocking of all was what the probe found when it got closer to the galactic center. There were ruins everywhere. Massive structures that had been abandoned for thousands of years. And in the middle of it all was a message, written in a language that the probe's computers could somehow understand. "Welcome," the message said, "to those wise enough to listen instead of attack. You have proven that your species is ready to inherit what we leave behind. The barrier was not meant to keep you out forever. It was meant to keep you out until you learn to think with both mind and heart." Emperor Kethver stared at the message on the screen. His scales had turned completely white, which meant he was experiencing emotions he had no words for. Around him, the greatest scientists of his empire stood in stunned silence. 5,000 years, he whispered. 5,000 years we spent trying to break down a door when all we had to do was knock. Lisa felt strange. Part of her was excited that her theory had worked, but another part of her felt sad for all the Zeltharian scientists who had spent their lives trying to solve this problem. They were not stupid people. They were brilliant. They had just been thinking about it in the wrong way. "Your Majesty," she said carefully, "I want you to know that I could not have done this without your people's research. All those thousands of years of data, all those experiments, they gave me the clues I needed. I just looked at them differently." Kilvin was still staring at the screens. His skin kept changing colors as his emotions shifted between amazement, confusion, and something that might have been embarrassment. "How?" he asked. "How did you see what we could not see?" Lisa thought about how to explain it. Sometimes when you look at something for too long, you stop really seeing it. You get used to thinking about it one way, and you can't imagine any other way. Fresh eyes can sometimes spot things that experienced eyes miss. "But you are primitive," said another scientist, a very old Zeltharian with dark gray skin. "Your technology is thousands of years behind ours." How can primitive minds solve what advanced minds cannot? Lisa smiled. Maybe that's exactly why. We don't know enough to know what's impossible. We ask simple questions that you stopped asking. Long ago, Captain Jake Morrison had been quiet during all of this, but now he stepped forward. What happens now? We've opened the barrier, but what does that mean for both our peoples? Emperor Kethver turned to look at him. The Emperor was thinking hard about something. Captain Morrison, Dr. Brooks, what do you want in return for this? Gift you have given us? Jake and Lisa looked at each other. They had talked about this possibility during their week at the research station, but they had never really believed it would happen. We want to learn, Lisa said. We want to share knowledge. Humans have always been curious about the universe. If we could learn from your science, and if you could learn from our way of thinking, imagine what we could accomplish together. You want partnership, the Emperor said. It was not a question. Yes, not conquest, not one species ruling over another. Partnership, working together to explore the galaxy and solve problems that neither of us could solve alone. The Emperor was quiet for a long time. Around the room, Zelfarian scientists were still studying the data from beyond the barrier. The probe had found technology that could change everything they knew about science. Ships that could travel instantly between any 2 points in the galaxy. Machines that could create planets. Weapons that could stop wars instead of starting them. But more than that, they had found libraries. Vast collections of knowledge left behind by the ancient race that had built the barrier. The beings who had created this test wanted their knowledge to be shared, but only with species that had learned to work together instead of just competing. Dr. Brooks, the Emperor said finally, you have done something in 1 week that my empire could not do in 50 centuries. You have humbled us, and you have taught us that wisdom can come from unexpected places. He stood up from his chair and did something that shocked everyone in the room. Emperor Kethvar, ruler of 1,000 worlds, bowed to the human scientist. I accept your offer of partnership, but I ask for something more. Will you stay and help us learn this new way of thinking? Will you teach our scientists to ask the simple questions again? Lisa felt tears in her eyes. This was beyond anything she had ever dreamed of. I would be honored. Over the following months, everything changed. Lisa became the first human to hold an official position in the Zelfarian Empire. She was named Chief Science Advisor, but more importantly, she became a teacher. She taught Zelfarian scientists to look at problems from new angles. She showed them how to ask what-if questions that they had stopped asking centuries ago. Most importantly, she taught them that being wrong was not failure. Being wrong was the first step toward being right. The partnership between humans and Zelfarians grew stronger every day. Human ships began exploring the galaxy alongside Zelfarian vessels. Human scientists worked side by side with alien researchers. And slowly, the rigid thinking that had trapped the Empire for thousands of years began to change. Captain Morrison and the New Horizons became the first Earth ship to be equipped with Zelfarian technology. But they also carried something more valuable. The news that humans were not alone in the universe, and that they had found friends among the stars. The technology beyond the barrier was slowly shared throughout the galaxy. But the ancient race that had left it behind had been wise. The technology only worked for species that truly cooperated. If they tried to use it for war or conquest, it simply stopped working. This forced everyone to change the way they thought about power. Instead of trying to conquer each other, different species began working together. The galaxy entered a new age of cooperation and discovery. Lisa often stood at the observation windows of the research station, looking out at the stars. Sometimes Jake would join her there. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had never found that barrier? Jake asked one day. "I think we would have found something else," Lisa replied. "Humans are explorers. We don't give up. Sooner or later, we would have run into the Zeltharians anyway." "But would it have ended this well?" Lisa smiled. "Maybe not. But I've learned something from all this. The universe is full of problems waiting to be solved. Some of them have been waiting for thousands of years. But every problem has a solution if you just know how to look for it." News of the human achievement spread throughout the galaxy. Other species began to take notice of these strange beings from a small blue planet. More importantly, they began to value fresh thinking over established authority. The phrase, "think like a human," became popular throughout Zeltharian space. It meant approaching problems with curiosity instead of assumptions, asking simple questions instead of complex ones, and never giving up just because something seemed impossible. Dr. Lisa Brooks had not just solved an ancient mystery. She had changed the way an entire galactic civilization thought about solving problems. And in doing so, she had opened a door between species that would benefit everyone for generations to come. The barrier remained open, a symbol of what could be accomplished when different minds worked together. The ancient race that had built it would have been proud. They had created the perfect test, one that could only be passed by species wise enough to value cooperation over conquest, curiosity over certainty, and simple questions over complex assumptions. And it had taken a human from a small blue planet to show the galaxy that sometimes the most profound solutions come from the most unexpected places. The New Horizons continued its mission of exploration, now accompanied by ships from dozens of different species. But wherever they went, they carried with them the lesson that Lisa Brooks had taught them all, that there was no such thing as an impossible problem, only problems that had not yet met the right kind of thinking. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries. But for the first time in thousands of years, beings throughout the stars felt confident that no mystery would remain unsolved forever. Because somewhere out there, a curious mind was always ready to ask a simple question that would change everything.